Scott Edmonds, late of the Canadian press, but no longer, and a former Winnipeg Free Press employee. I'm sure they'd be happy to hear your assessment of their publication and the way it's survived and continued to work. But I'm wondering whether you think that we've walked through the door that says abandon all hope on issues of concentration and cross-ownership in Canada. The United States resisted the lure of cross-ownership for a lot longer than Canada did. I don't know whether it's helped them any, considering the state of their industry, but has it benefited Canada to drop that bar, and would reducing or eliminating the foreign ownership restrictions, which were so successfully bypassed by the CanWest Post Media deal, would reducing or eliminating those be encourage perhaps more real diversity in Canadian media ownership than preserving, especially the concentration rule that has led to incredible concentration in Canada in a relatively short period of time.
Okay, let me knock them off one at a time. Cross ownership kind of took care of itself in Canada. Didn't work out very well. So experimented for a while, convergence experiments around the late 1990s, early 2000s. So I think in a sense those are resolved one way or another, whether we relate to the game or not. I think the game is probably over. Secondly, concentration of ownership. Concentration ownership always remains an issue, and it's still an important issue. My argument is only that it's been superseded by much more pressing issues of the financial viability of news operations, whoever owns them or however they're owned. That's not to say that it's not an issue that should still be dealt with. I just don't think it should be the top uppermost mind issue for us, and certainly as a marketplace of ideas issue. The internet has introduced all kinds of ability of people to have access of their ideas to other people in society. So that's good. Foreign ownership's always been a kind of, or the restrictions on foreign ownership in Canadian media has always been a bit of an anomaly because, of course, Canadians can own media outside the country, and others can't control media in Canada, with the exception of how Post Media found a note through Section 19. And I don't know how I feel about that. I feel a bit, conflicted. I don't know where I come down in being a bit conflicted. I think that, media is inherently local, inherently national, particularly when you're a smaller country living next to the United States. We're not a small country, Canada, but we certainly are compared to our neighbor to the south. So having ownership that, as I say, is invested in Canada feels that they need to cover this country and understand its future and understand what's going on, and it seems to me a good value. I can also see that there's certain foreign owners who might be terrific foreign owners and great partners. So so I can imagine that there could be worse Canadian owners and better foreign owners in a given circumstance. I'm not sure I would start twisting policy into knots over that. If you're on a going forward basis, and this is an important point that we haven't discussed, but if you're creating any kind of new policy, you have issues that didn't exist, for instance, when Section 19 was created, around NAFTA, around the WTO, around tax treaties that we have with other countries vis-a-vis differential treatment of their taxation, and kind of regulatory and legal matters like that make it difficult to discriminate only on the basis of nationality. So when magazines were had new policy come in the late 1990s to try to preserve Canadian magazines at the expense of split-run magazines. Canada lost a case at the World Trade Organization on that, not a NAFTA case, but a World Trade Organization case. And that's meant that they had to create the policy on a different criteria, which is the Canadian content criteria, which also has become kind of a bit unsustainable because a lot of magazine companies, they have to measure the size of the Donald Trump picture next to the size of the Justin Trudeau picture and then submit this, and every week they have to, if they're weekly or monthly, whatever. And of course, most of them exist digitally now, so it becomes, just kind of almost complete nonsense. It's not a good way to go forward in the digital realm. So I think there's other criteria that, can get you there, but I'd lean towards all things equal Canadian ownership of Canadian media, certainly Canadian voices, telling Canadian stories in a sovereign nation called Canada.